Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the 2X philosophy. As you see, I'm no longer in Istanbul, but I am in Andalusia in the south of Spain. By the way, I checked that video from Istanbul and it kind of turned out rubbish. I apologize for that. The sound was breaking in and out, and I didn't look at the camera very much either. But as I say, structure first, quality later. In my recent post, I called it structure first, contents later, but then I thought about it, and the real message is structure first, quality later. So as bad as the videos are, or as poor as they are, I should say, I keep putting them out there, and I trust that with each one, the quality will be better. So it was a good trip to Taiwan, made a lot of contacts. It was an interesting layover in Istanbul. I've been to Turkey a few times. It's never really been a place that pulls me back, but it was interesting to see the Bosphorus and see Istanbul a little bit. Today I want to talk about the ideal 2X philosophy follower profile. And when I often explain things or prove things, I like to argue from the extreme. It's not arguing from the extreme, I should say. It's using the extreme to show a clear case, and then one can extrapolate from there and go beyond the clear case to see how well it still fits into his situation. And I think this comes from being trained in the law, in the common law. And in the common law, things are based on precedent and prior cases. So when you want to determine if your case is solid, you look at prior cases. And if it's actually, what do we call it? There's a word, spot on or something like that. If it's on point, meaning that it could never happen, but it's, all the facts are the same and the situation is the same, then it should be ruled the same. So that would be if you have an overlay and it's exactly the same. And then you go from there. Since you never have that ideal profile, you take a step out of it and you say, okay, is it still good law? Is it still applying? And you can take more and more steps away. The further you get away, the less sense it makes. But you start from the idea of the ideal and then work your way out. I consider them concentric circles. So the ideal follower of the 2X philosophy, I think, is somebody in the following situation. And I can relate to this, and I know many people who can relate to this, and I've had people in my lives who can relate to this. So with that background, I think I came up with the philosophy. And I'll present that ideal profile to you, and then we'll see, how much it suits. So I'll just go through some characteristics. I would say the ideal profile for somebody to follow the 2X philosophy is somebody who wants to change his or her life. From now on, I'll just say his life. There's a weakness in the English language. The English language is a horrible language. It doesn't have rules, and it's been bastardized through globalization. And people, they like to say they when they mean he or she. It makes no sense. They is a plural pronoun, and we're talking about individual, in this case, individual noun. So it's total idiocy to say they. But so it's somebody who wants to have some kind of a change in his life, who wants to have a positive change in his life, I should say. And it's oftentimes somebody who has lived a lot of his life as well. I think the ideal case is somebody around 50 years of age. And I say that because if you're younger, if you're 40, you're still young enough to make radical change in your life. If you're 80, it's probably too late to make radical change in your life. If you're 70, it's too late to make much change in your life. But 50 is this age at which I think a lot of people arrive. And let's say when we're 15 or we're 20, we think everything's going to be so easy. Everything's going to be golden for me. I'm going to be successful and rich, and I'm going to have this kind of a life and things. And at least I know, for me and the people, I knew when I was young, we thought it was evident. Everything is going to be so rocking for us. But we didn't think that, you have to put a lot of work in and a lot of energy. You have to get off the couch and you have to work hard and things. And what happens is you don't realize that. And if nobody tells you or shows you, You stay in this darkness for a while, and then suddenly you're 30, and you look around and you think, wait a minute, so it was supposed to look different. And then you're 40, and you might have a wife and kids and such, and you're in a job maybe you don't even like, and you think it was supposed to be different. Why isn't it different? It's not different because you didn't know what the rule book was, and nobody told you how to play the game, and you probably weren't ambitious or cognizant enough to go out and try to find out how to play the game. So the life gets away from people like that. Of course, there are exceptions. There are people who are, I have a whole theory about how the classifications of people, how they're slotted in, and I can share that at some point. But for us, for the normal people, oftentimes, the life just keeps going. You don't have the playbook. And at some point you look around and you say, what happened? It was supposed to be so different. And then when you're 50, I guess this is post midlife crisis, right? People have midlife crises, let's say around 45 or something like that. But let's say you get to that age and you look around and you think, wow, this was supposed to be different. Something didn't work out right. But at that age, you're kind of stuck in a lifestyle or in a life, and you really don't know how to get out of it. And I believe I found a way. And I don't want to say get out of it, because probably most of it is really nice. You might be very happy, but there could be something missing in a person's life. And he says, I've gotten to this point, didn't turn out the way I wanted. I feel empty. What am I going to do? And it's too late to tip the apple cart over and start everything new, obviously. And it's too dangerous. You don't want to mess up your whole existence. So I say, what I came up with, and coming up with is a strong word, it came to me in a flash, was I should look internally and stop looking for goals, looking for external manifestations. I should turn internally and say, okay, what can I do internally to improve my situation at this age? And what I came up with was to develop myself into the person who would be the 2x version, or twice the version of the person I was at the time. So that's how I came up with the 2x philosophy. I was 53, almost 54, and I looked around and said, I want to do something. All these sort of expectations / dreams, whatever, didn't come true. So I want to do something that gives me fulfillment. And I came up with the idea of working to become twice the person I was at the time. And I set out to sort of structure that philosophy and apply it to my life. And boy, did it work out. It worked out fantastically. And I'm not going to say my life is completely different now. It's not. It's different, but I'm completely different. And that's the real key behind the philosophy, because we're not looking for these external manifestations that things have changed. It has to be an internal feeling, or it ought to be an internal feeling. And that's what it is for me. So let's circle back. What's the ICP? In marketing, we say the ideal customer profile, which for me to talk about marketing is already a sign that I've been in the 2X philosophy, because I knew nothing about marketing a year ago. But in any case, the ICP is somebody around 50 who wants to make change in his life or her life, who is probably, strike that, who has been unfulfilled up to now, hasn't amounted to his or her dreams or expectations of what life would be, and is looking for a tool to become more of a person, to grow internally, who thinks maybe some external manifestations would be nice, but is not counting on them, is ready to do the internal work, and is ready to dedicate time and energy and heart to doing something that takes regular repetition. It doesn't have to necessarily be hard, but it requires dedication. Regularly doing it, consistently doing it, without, in many cases, without the manifestation of external success. That means getting on a path to become that 2X version of the person, and doing, and maybe getting no sign that he's on the right path, but doing it anyway. That is the ICP the ideal customer profile of the 2X philosophy. I wonder if that helps. I hope it did. I'm ready to take questions. I'm going to post this video tomorrow. In the meantime, I'm going to show you the beautiful Med behind me. And as I turn, you can see Gibraltar in the distance. And that's the 2X philosophy for today. I hope it was beneficial. Take care. Out.